I got a clothes pop.
Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show here in Bogalusa, Louisiana. I'm joined today by a couple of gifted cats. Herschel Dwellingham, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show, my friend.
And thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Can you introduce your singing partner here?
My singing partner is Molina Lady Black Lace, a.k.a. Molly Holt of the Rascals.
Molly Holt, Buzzy Feedon, dude. 2 days ago, I was there on the island of Rio, cooking with him, and now to be with this beautiful woman singing like crazy. What an honor!
Thank you.
Herschel, just to warm up the audience here, can you play a little Madonna's Elvin Jones for us?
Some little Elvin Jones.
Little Elvin Jones. I want you to talk to the audience, Herschel, about the first time that you saw Elvin at Madonna's in New Orleans and the modified kit he was playing and how it inspired you. For drummers out there listening who think they need this whole big trap set, what did Elvin have and what kind of vibe?
Elvin had a bass drum, a snare drum, a ride, and a crash cymbal. Hi-hat, and that was it.
That was it.
And it sounded like he had a complete set of drums. At being a young man at about the age of 17, that flipped me right out. So I went home, got rid of all my toms, and started working on that. And I mean, really, I found I got it together. And for many years at the garage, for about 3 or 4 years, I played at the garage Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and Sunday, with just a bass and a snare drum, cymbals. That was my complete set.
But cats were coming up and saying it sounds like you had a complete set. Is that
they
just?
Thought I had a complete set.
Is that just?
Then they come to sit in.
Well, I mean, people are having a ball. Murata's tuning in. Just keep cooking the groove for us, dude.
Yeah.
Can you play a little something for us? I mean, we're marinating down here in Bogalusa. Play whatever you want.
I'll play a little that kind of New Orleans. by a great New Orleans drummer, Smokey Johnson. I saw him when I was a kid, fell in love with it.
Can you talk about how you originally connected with Earl Palmer?
Well, when I was a kid, my parents were teachers in the school system here, and they took me to a prom. I was about 3 or 4 years old. They took me to a prom one evening at the high school, and Earl had been put out the union in New Orleans for accusing him and Lee Allen had accused the president of the union of stealing the money from the
Which he
union.
definitely was.
Right.
Yeah.
So then Earl needed a job, so he started playing with a group that was very famous in the South called the Rhythm Aces. Bobby Bryant was in there. Pudd'nhead Jones, a whole bunch.
Who was
great,
the King Curtis sax player? What was his name?
that was with Stuff. That was Charlie Brown.
No. Who was the sax player in the Rhythm Aces? Though you mentioned.
I mentioned. His name was Hump Manning. He was also the arranger. Hump Manning was the arranger, and matter of fact, they taught me how to write. That's how I started writing and arranging.
Wow.
But he came, and I was watching Earl all night, standing up at the drum set, just watching Earl. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing as a kid. And when the night was over, he handed me a pair of drumsticks, and that started me off.
Now, did you actually get to go on the road with the Rhythm Aces, or were you too young?
Well, they would travel all over. I was still in high school, but we were on the weekends. We would travel all over.
Play like black
Texas.
colleges.
Well, colleges, ballrooms, different clubs, all over everywhere. They would get me in clubs. I couldn't drink, but I would work, and they took me to Jackson, Mississippi, everywhere, all over the South. They worked, and I worked with them Then eventually, before I moved, went to Boston to school at Berkeley. They had a study gig at a club outside of town here called the Plantation. And I worked there until I got ready to go to college, music school in Boston at Berkeley.
Do you feel like the most invaluable experience you got was time feel? I mean, there's a difference between playing in the time signature, but then making it feel good. How did Earl? How did you? What was the most valuable experience that you got before you went to Berkeley, as it related to time feel?
Well, I would listen to different drummers. My two favorite drummers was always Grady Tate and Earl Palmer. I wanted to play jazz like Earl Palmer. I wanted to play funk and rock and all that like Earl Palmer, and play jazz like Grady Tate. And those are the two drummers that I really listen to a lot. I have bought one of those -1 albums.
Oh yeah, Music -1.
Music -1, which was Jim Champlin Music -1. And he had a book so you can learn how to see the drum parts. And I wanted to learn to read drum parts, and the book came with a drum part. I had two of them. I had O.C. Johnson, and I had Jim Champlin.
O.C. is O-S-I-E, right?
Yeah.
O.C. And the other one was who?
The other one's Ossie.
Ossie, yeah.
I had the one that was not O.C., Ossie.
Ossie Johnson.
Right, the light complexion one, Ossie. And I was learning to read through those drum books. And the funniest thing, when I did Harry Chapin's Catons in the Cradle album, I didn't even know that was his father. Else I would have said something. I didn't put the two Chaplins together. It didn't dawn on me until later that was the same guy I had studied how to read with 1 -1, those albums. So it was fantastic.
We're talking to could you play the groove to Cats in the Cradle? Will Lee's going to be here in this, and this guy's not on the record, never credited for the groove, but he's got a desk full of checks for Cats in the Cradle, baby.
Yeah.
And the man in the mood coming home.
It was a big mess, that whole thing. Harry wanted his father to play the session, and Paul Lecker wanted me to do it, because I had been coming there doing other things.
Yeah, I don't. Harry Chapin. Shame on you, man. This cat. I want to speak to the positive.
I gave him the hit. That's what I did.
You and Will.
Me and Will.
Tropez
is on it.
Tropez. By the way, Murata's tuning in. When you talked about learning how to write, talk to younger cats out there, especially they're in the R&B. I hate labels, but how did you learn to write infectious hooks in songs?
Say that again. How did I write?
Hooks. How did you learn to arrange to write really, really good hooks in tunes? How did you learn to arrange like that?
Oh, okay.
I'm speaking about that one album that you did in '69, the original tune, "A Young Girl."
Yes.
Is that an innate thing, or is that something you learned from the cats from the Rhythm Aces?
I learned from the guy from the Rhythm Aces and my band director, who was also in the Rhythm Aces. Robert Hodge, he was playing tenor in the Rhythm Aces when I was in it, and he taught me how to write so I could write for the school band. And I used to write the halftime shows. I would do all the music for the halftime shows.
How much freedom did you get?
I did that to keep from marching. I hated marching band, so I made a deal that I would orchestrate and arrange the halftime show music to keep from wearing that monkey suit and marching. I hated it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to wear a monkey suit either.
Yeah, I hated that. I hate marching band.
Your first real hit was "Young Girl." Is that right?
No, my first real hit was a song in 1962 called "Come On and Tell Her" on Ron and Rick Records.
What was the name of the record label?
"Come On and Tell Her." It
What?
was by a guy named out of New Orleans named Benny Freeman.
Benny Freeman.
Yes. I went to New Orleans with a whole bunch of records and showed them to a guy named Joey Fino. And he signed my songs. One day I listened to the radio, all of a sudden the song was on there. He had signed about 10 of my songs. And that was one of them. And it became a big hit. And then, when I had a couple of hits here, and somebody did a song of mine called Mighty Mouse, a white group. And that was a hit here while I lived here. Then when I went to Boston, that's when I wrote "Young Girl" and produced it.
That's right.
And it was by Frank Lynch.
Frank did the original, and then somebody else did the...
And then Eli Paperboy Reed, he found it.
Paperboy Reed, dude, I love it.
He found it on the floor in a store where Skippy White had moved out of the store. Skippy White was like Crazy Eddie to New York, to Boston. So he found it when Skippy had moved out in the dirt, took it home, heard it, and did a version of it, showed it to Capitol Records and got a deal.
Wow.
And had another big hit on the song.
Yeah, that was more of an electric, like funk.
Well, it's kind of R&B-ish, but a little different. But my same arrangement. He copied my arrangement. Before I lose, why did you? Because he's tuning in, Rick Murata. What did you love about using him as when you were just wanting to produce? I used Rick to do some music
What was Rick? Why did you have so much trust in Rick Marotta?
Well, I knew him from Tropez, and I had met him
Shaman Tropez, dude.
as a friend, and we all worked at the studio House of Music in Montclair, and I know Rick, and I knew he was a great drummer, so I needed a drummer to do the music from. I had been called. I got an assignment to do the music from a disco version of music from the Broadway show Raisin. And I used Rick to play the part, play the drums for me, because I did all of the instruments at one time at CBS. Then I've used Jimmy Young to do things, to do a project, album project. I used Purdy. When Serpico came out, I did.
Serpico. Bob James was on that.
I did another Serpico thing.
You did?
Yes.
It's my favorite movie.
Dance music.
It's my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, for Serpico, and Purdy played drums on that.
Wow.
So I use other drummers because I sometimes I like to just be the conductor and arranger. And I would call guys that I knew could take care of the job. And Rick Marotta, Purdy, and Jimmy Young, they're probably the only drummers I ever used in New York. Now in Boston, I used a guy named Billy Kay to do a whole bunch of records for me when I didn't want to play at Ace Recording Studio in Boston.
We're going back in time. I mean, we're promoting for the future here, but I just want to be very clear about a situation in Berkeley. You were part of a band with the late, great John Abercrombie.
Right.
You talk about John at that time and the band that you were. I forget the name of the band you were in, but I mean, this was
Danny Wright Orchestra.
Levine was on. Mark Levine was on Bone.
Yeah, and Abercrombie on guitar. The piano player was Carl Schroeder.
Dig, yeah. Played with Sarah Vaughan.
Yeah, and there was a guy named Ken Stanley, the trumpet player. Milgram was the Barry player, and Danny was the alto player in the band.
That music geared more towards R&B than jazz?
The band played a little mixture of jazz, dance, like that dance jazz, and R&B and funk.
This is something I wanted. Who was your go-to engineer on Raisin or on any of these sessions? Were you doing the engineering as well?
No, I was on those things. I had somebody else engineering.
I'm curious about how
the engineer that did most of my work at House of Music was Jeff Kowalik. And he was my engineer there. I learned a lot from him too. And I talk to him every now and then. He's a mixer now for sports. He travels all over the world. He just went to Europe to do hockey. He travels all over the world doing the sound mix for a sport event.
That's fantastic. You mean in a live setting?
Yes.
Interesting. I just wanted to, when it comes to, you've been on so many hit records, some very famous, some not. What was his miking technique? Because I feel like in the old school engineers did not mic all the drums. Can you talk about that, about the early sort of more maybe primitive miking techniques of the drum kit? Because I think that allowed the music to breathe.
In the 60s, as I know,
yeah,
from Ace Recording Studio,
which where
engineer Shelley Yaka's father owned, and his uncle Milton. I mean, his father Milton and his uncle was, I can't remember now, it comes to me, but they would just put two mics up, two stereo mics over the drums. And
exactly, a right overhead and a left overhead.
Yeah, and the thing about that is it made you had to have the balance of your playing. You had to make it so that everything sounded even. That was great for drummers there.
What do you mean by that? I go deeper on the even part.
Because, see, sometimes some drummers play some things louder than others. Where if you, in those days, you had to make everything very even yourself. You know, you made the drum set sound even in stereo. Because there wasn't no, like this, you mic the snare, you mic the hi-hat.
Right.
They didn't do that then.
What about it as it related to dynamics? How hard you had to hit the drums? Did you have to be lighter or
I was always a light drummer.
a light drummer?
I let the drum head, see? I let the drum do the work. I don't stop it from working. You let it make, it's like playing a piano. It's the way you hit the keys for the dynamics. I always been a very light drummer because I used to live in apartments.
Right.
And I wanted to practice, so I had to learn to. I didn't have to be real loud.
Right. You didn't want to wake.
So I could practice in my apartment.
Yeah, so tasty,
And I
man.
missed the touch. And I still got that touch. That's the touch. Like I had a guy, I went out to do a thing with the Platters up in Maine. And the guy says to me, he said, listen, he said, you must do a lot of studio work. I said, well, I had never met him. He said, because I just opened the mics up and they were even. He said, that very seldom happened. He said, I just opened the mics up and the drum just was even as could be. I said, yeah, I do a lot of studio work. Yeah, that was in like, before I moved here about the 90s.
Right. This is important for people. I was talking to James Singleton, great bass player, for his gig last night with Stanton Moore, and I was like, yo, I'm going to see Dwellingham tomorrow in Bogalusa. He said, that dude lives here? I said, yeah, he sure does. I said, dude, the guy was on, playing the Sugar Shack and doing all this stuff with Grady Tate and, at Berkeley and with Abercrombie and the Danny Wright. And he's like, Sweet Nighter. And
That's what he said.
well, that's what the point is that name, I want you to take us through that story because the bottom line is the guy called you up and he's like, I want to speak to your son. You're like, well, my son's 4 years old.
Yeah.
And
Bob
so
he
take.
wanted to speak to my son. I said, my son is 4 years old.
Well, who called you first of all? What was his name?
Bob DeVere.
And he was head of CBS
He worked at CBS, but he was also the manager of Weather Report.
So he called you.
Yeah, he called me, but the funniest thing, he knew me because he wanted to buy a master that I produced on an artist.
Which one?
A thing called Love, Peace, and Joy on an artist named Maurice.
Oh my!
And he wanted to buy it. They wanted to buy it and give it to O.C. Smith. They wanted to take my whole tape, arrangements, everything, and put O.C. Smith on the tracks. And I said no. They went up to 25,000.
I think you said 15 or something, and you're like, I can't do it. I can't do that.
I couldn't do it, no. And I went over to RCA and sold the master. But Bob DeVere was the one that met me that day and was trying to make the deal. So when he called me, I said, Bob, you don't remember who I am? I said, Herschel Dwellingham. I said, I had that master you wanted to buy for O.C. Smith. He said, you that guy? You play drums? I said, yeah, I play drums. He said, I thought you was a piano player or arranger. I said, no, I'm playing drum on that record.
And I'm an arranger, yeah.
So that's how it all started.
But no. Then he said, well, Zolino gave him instructions to find the funkiest man on the planet.
And everybody told him me.
Dwelling, you had already established yourself as the funkiest drummer. I mean, there was some serious competition there as well in the city at that time. But he said, go get Dwellingham.
Right, I think Donald Ayers, Gene Perla.
Wait, Don Elias, the Conguero?
Yeah.
The baddest cat ever, dude.
Yeah. See, he was in Boston for a while with us.
Yeah, because he played with Levine in that salsa band with
Yeah.
Perla.
So Don Elias and Gene Perla, a couple other people told him about me. And that's when he called me.
Are you able to lay down that groove for the audience right now?
Well, you know, I re-recorded it.
Do it any way you want.
Well, I the Boogie Wiggle Waltz.
Boogie Woogie, yeah. Now, was that in the studio? Gravad and Zalwindel almost threw down. They threw fists. So after that, then you actually had to play the music. The vibe was still okay, where you were able to cook that up.
I mean, I didn't know they almost threw down. I didn't know that till maybe a couple of years recently when I talked to Kavaz. I talked to him maybe 5 years ago. And he called me to tell me I have to give it to him. He called me and said, I'm sorry, Herschel, about how I acted when you was there doing the record.
You're talking about Gravad.
Yes.
Because he was angry. He was pissed.
And he had a right to be angry. I know if I came to a session and found another drummer there, and unless I was told, he wasn't told.
Right.
So then I says, I talked to him, and then he told me he was sorry about how that all took place, and that he just wanted me to know that me and him was still cool. You know? And I said, okay. And he said, people asked me, who's playing the funky shit? He told people it was me. And we became,
good, because you know what, he has to own up to, he has to meet his maker too. He's got to be straight ahead.
Yeah. So
a lot of people would just assume it was him.
Yes.
But he had to say no. That was Dwellingham.
Right. He said that, and we talked a while. A funny thing happened. I went to Washington for a big thing with Sandra Phillips. She was going to sing God, it's a song from Raisin.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the orchestrations and everything for a symphony orchestra with the symphony there. And I went there and I didn't conduct, but I did the rehearsals to be sure everything was right. And the drummer who was there playing in the orchestra was a friend of Kavaz. And he came up to me and said, man, you're the guy from Weatherford, Eric. I'm Eric's friend. He said, I didn't know you write like this. I said, yeah, I write symphonies and I write R&B. I write a lot of music, I've done R&B, I've done symphonies, I've done all kind of music. I love writing more than I like playing.
That's interesting.
And today I do more composing and producing things for my record label, Magic City Records. Reason they call it Magic City is Bogalusa came out of nowhere because of the trees. And it grew up real fast because of this sawmill, the world's largest sawmill. The good years came here, and
they they built all the neighborhoods,
and they built this big sawmill, and people started coming to work.
Right.
And they had kittens and things in the park, Cassidy Park area now, and they call it the Magic City because the city came out of nowhere. So they call it Bogalusa, the Magic City. So the name of my label is Bog for Bogalusa, Magic City Records. And we got quite a few artists and we sell records. So I do most of my work for that now. And every now and then I get called. I just did 3 or 4 days, about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, of session at Studio in the Country, which is a great studio made by made by the Westlake out of L.A. In the 60s it was built. And it's really great.
You know, I wanted you... Who were the original session cats that you would play with at Cosmos Records?
Play with where now?
There's Earl Palmer's ghost just entering the room here. At Cosmos Records.
Cosmos?
Yeah, who were the cats? Was Uganda?
The
Uganda?
weirdest thing was going to surprise you. I never played drums at Cosmos.
But you did. You were.
I played piano.
So you did play piano.
I played piano on records at Cosmos that I wrote. And
was Alan there? Toussaint?
Huh?
Was Alan there?
Toussaint? No, he wasn't part of that. That was for Ron and Rick Records. And there was a band from Texas the first time, which Huey Mukes was there doing the latest thing, You Lose a Good Thing.
Right.
I can't think of her name now.
But you were playing piano.
And I was playing piano on records that I wrote that were being cut. And at that time, Dr. John Mack was working for Joe Rufino, doing lead sheets and stuff. And he would every now and then give me a couple tips on my writing.
What would he say?
Just how he would look at my scores and say, try doing this and doing that.
Mac.
And I met him, and he couldn't even remember me in New York. But he gave me a lot of it. When I go over to this record company, he would be there doing lead sheets or something, and he would tell me a lot of things. I owe a lot to Mac telling me things.
In our radio interview, you talked about Alan Dawson helping you learn the syncopated. Can you demonstrate what he?
What Alan would do was, I don't know if I do it that well. He had a thing where you go. He would take the Rogers stick control book,
right,
and you do what's on the left with your hands and what's on the right with your foot. So you go.
Wow. How you take that back to your apartment and you just work that out, or you work it out on the bandstand with Peggy Lee?
No, I worked that out when I went to his classes, at Berkeley, and he would tell you to do that. Like that, I don't do it that much anymore.
Dude, I love it.
But that's what you would do, and then go back and. They think I only play funk.
Well, no, but I want to be clear.
But in Boston, I play with a lot of jazz groups.
The point there was that he was showing you how to kind of mix genres.
Yeah, and to syncopate and get your brains to working with your limbs.
How have you?
It's the George Stone book that you use to do that. And I teach kids. I got a little kid. He lives around the corner here now, but he used to come to me named DJ, and I told him that I use that with little young students to get their syncopation and their sticking together.
Mixed sticking patterns.
Yeah.
How have you, Herschel, all the generosity from Grady Tate, all the generosity from Tropez, how have you continued to keep that in your life? How do you affect positive change in your life?
I try to do a lot for other people. I try to find artists I can help. young people that want to play. I got another little young guy. He wants to come over and learn to play. I told him to bring him over when he can. I told his aunt, his grandmother, and I try to pass it on. You know, like the thing with the sticks. I keep 3 or 4 pair of new sticks for when a kid come and sit like I did with Earl and look at me play, and then I think, oh, he might want to be a drummer. I give him a pair of new sticks. I start him off. So, I mean, it's you got to keep it going. You got to pass it on. I got a little young guy. He went to Southern University. He got a degree. He does some music. I did a couple of tracks. I'm using a couple of his tracks with some of my artists. I want to teach him orchestration and arranging. So, you know, I want to give that. I got so much knowledge. I don't want to die and don't pass it on to somebody.
This is why you're getting it out on the Jay Feinberg show right now.
That's right.
The idea here is that younger cats today are learning to play machine parts because they're hearing so much digital drum tracking. And
well, I got news for you. I do more machines when I do records now than I do playing on them.
But how do you expect people to sound like themselves if they're
playing? Because it sounds like, if you hear my stuff, it sounds like somebody's
I'm
playing.
not worried about you. You were on the bandstand at a different time in our country.
Oh, yeah, but see, the thing is, what I do, I put in a beat that I would play the way I play it. So it sounds right. Some people just go, doo-doo-doo, they just hitting buttons. That don't sound like no music, you know? That doesn't sound right. Same thing with the way I do my MIDI stuff, MIDI orchestras, is I write a score. I use a program called Genie Soft, which used to be Overture, and I write a whole score like I used to write for real music. Then I turn that into a MIDI file, so the stuff come out sounding real. It doesn't sound like somebody playing the piano. It sounds like a real orchestra because I voice the things the way a real orchestra would be voiced. So when my MIDI plays, I use like Vienna Symphony or East-West Orchestra. I use good orchestras, and it sounds real. It's hard to tell the difference. But if you play a part like a piano player, it sounds like a string section piano. It doesn't sound like a real string. It doesn't have the voicing and the spacing of a real string orchestra. A real string orchestra wouldn't play like F-A-C, E-flat,
right,
like that. You would voice that maybe E-flat, A, then C and F in the bass, which has more space. That sounds like a real string quartet. So that's a difference. But so I don't try to play in all my parts. I write a score, turn it to a MIDI file, and then boom, it sounds like a real orchestra.
Did you know about Marie Laveau? You know, these women, these shaman priestesses
from New Orleans.
They were, and they performed for white audiences. Charlie Neville was telling me about her. Hoodoo is.
I know the names, but I don't know anything about their work.
Were you exposed to some hoodoo music or?
Not really, you know. Bogalusa is more. It doesn't have the culture of New Orleans. The only way I got the culture of New Orleans.
Not many cities do, you know.
I used to, in the summer, when I was out of school, go live with my aunt who lived in New Orleans. And I would go to the Dewdrop Inn. I go to all those places.
Hayes' Chicken Shack?
The Chicken Shack. I had no business there, but I could get in because
sure.
I look older.
Sure.
And I go see Ernie Cato. I go see Tommy Ridgely, all those people. And that's how I got to know New Orleans music. And I was a fan of Alan Toussaint and Professor Longhair, which is from Bogalusa.
That's right.
He's originally from here.
Longhair.
So I would learn to play piano like Alan Toussaint and Professor Longhair. I learned that, and I got that kind of piano style. And I played organ at my church every Sunday. My mother played piano, I played organ since I was 4 years old. I taught myself how to play, how to do most things. Then I went to school to learn what I was doing. That's kind of how I was.
Just for the record, can you tell the story about playing with Joe Williams and all of a sudden you look over and Mace is there?
One time we was at, me and Richard Reed, we were playing behind Joe Williams. Or either we were playing, I know we did play Joe Williams, but I think we were playing behind somebody where the music was kind of more funky, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And
more funk than blues.
yeah, Richard Reed said, listen, Herschel, look at Harvey Mason over there. What are you doing? He writing something. I said, well, Richard, I don't know. That's his,
That's his business.
That's his business. So Richard, I'm going to see. Because Richard, Richard don't play. And happy birthday, Richard.
Yo, Richard Reed, baby.
Today is your birthday. So Richard he went over there and looked and grabbed the stuff. He said, you writing down Herschel's drum licks. Drum beats and shit. He was writing drum beats.
Mace was transcribing your drum beats.
Yeah.
Before we go, can you just finish with some play melodically on the kit for the audience?
Yes.
Much love to you, Mr. Dwellingham.
Yeah. Goodbye, guys.
It's the Jake Feinberg Show, live from Bogalusa. We'll see you later.